The sun beat down hard on Bitter Creek's dusty main street, where a crude wooden platform creaked under the weight of a chained woman. Her dress, once blue, now clung to her like a second skin, stained with red dust and heat. Her posture remained rigid, head high, despite the jeers of the gathered crowd. A bottle flew, shattering near her feet. Laughter roared. "Ain't she a wild one?" the auctioneer bellowed, wiping sweat from his neck with a greasy handkerchief. "Reckon she'd tear your throat if you let her." From the back of the crowd, Caleb McGraw watched in silence, hat low, jaw tight. The townsfolk knew little about him, only that he ran cattle along the northern ridge and didn't take to company. A man who spoke less than he listened, and fought only when cornered. The bidding began harsh and humiliating. $10. 15. She bites. I'll take the risk. 25. But someone best tame her first. The woman said nothing. Her eyes scanned the crowd, and something about her gaze, not fear, not shame, but calculation, unsettled Caleb. Before we uncover the secret that silenced an entire town, don't forget to subscribe for more untold Wild West legends. The auctioneer called out again, "Come on, boys! She's got fire in her, but fire makes a house warm." A ripple of cruel laughter, then a voice calm and clear. 50. The crowd turned. Caleb stepped forward, a single coin pouch in hand. The townspeople erupted. "McGraw's lost his damn mind. She ain't no woman, she's a curse." The auctioneer hesitated. "You serious, boy?" Caleb didn't blink. "Let her down." Grumbling, the auctioneer motioned to the guards. Chains rattled. As they stepped forward, the woman raised her wrist, halting them. From her satchel, hidden beneath the folds of her dress, she pulled a worn leather wallet. She flipped it open slowly. A silver badge caught the light. It shone clean despite the dust, the words etched deep. United States Circuit Judge. A gasp spread like wildfire. The mayor stepped from the saloon porch, red-faced and fuming. "What kind of charade is this?" The woman's voice cut through the air, crisp and unwavering. "My name is Judge Elena Ward. I was not bought. I was rescued." Silence fell like a hammer. "You held a federal officer in chains," she continued, eyes now locked on the mayor. "There will be consequences." The crowd backed away, murmuring. The auctioneer stammered. Even the guards froze, uncertain. Caleb said nothing. He simply turned and walked. After a pause, Elena stepped down from the platform and followed him. Behind them, Bitter Creek streets fell into an uneasy hush. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once, and then silence ruled. The badge still gleamed in her hand. The road into Bitter Creek was long, flanked by sagebrush and silence. That morning, Caleb had ridden in with a single purpose: trade 2 calves, pick up flour, and leave before midday. He didn't like towns. Not since the law turned into business, and the badge meant less than the gun that carried it. He hadn't planned on bidding. He hadn't planned on staying. Now, with the sun lowering and dust still on his boots, Caleb stood at the edge of something far bigger than a cattle deal. Behind him, the town murmured. The woman, Judge Eleanor Ward, stood calm beside him, her badge displayed with quiet defiance. The crowd hadn't moved much. Whispers circled like vultures. A woman? A judge? Since when? That badge could be fake. She played him like a fiddle. The mayor, red with embarrassment, stepped forward again. "This is a federal matter now." His voice shook slightly. "You expect us to believe you're here on duty?" Eleanor didn't flinch. "I expect you to recognize the jurisdiction of the United States government, unless Bitter Creek has seceded recently." A few snickers broke the tension, but most remained wary. Caleb's voice was low but steady. "She came here in chains. You ought to be asking how that happened." "Stay out of this, McGraw," the mayor snapped. Elena turned slightly toward Caleb. "You didn't have to do what you did." "I know. Why did you?" He hesitated. "Didn't like how they were looking at you." She studied him for a moment, as if measuring weight, then nodded once. "Thank you." The auctioneer tried to resume the day's schedule, but no one paid attention. One by one, townsfolk drifted away, unease settling over the square like a cold fog. Inside the saloon, A burly man in a deputy's vest leaned against the bar, watching through slitted eyes. "Elena Ward," he muttered, still breathing. Outside, the mayor stepped close to Elena, lowering his voice. "If you're really a judge, where's your authority? Where's your escort? Who gave you the right to barge into my town with a badge and no warning?" Elena met his gaze. "I didn't barge in, I was dragged in. You let them parade me like cattle. Ask your men how she got here. Ask your auctioneer what he was promised." The mayor's mouth tightened. "This isn't over." "No," she said. "It's just beginning." Caleb turned to her quietly. "Got a place outside town." "No one will follow you there." "I don't need protection," she replied. "Didn't say you did," he answered, "but you got dust in your eyes and blood on your lip. Maybe let someone help this time." For a moment her jaw clenched, then softened. "Lead the way." As they walked together past the last of the gawking eyes, Bitter Creek watched them with a mixture of suspicion and dread. And somewhere behind a shuttered window, a name long buried had just been remembered and feared. The cabin stood half a mile north of Bitter Creek, tucked between sunburnt hills and a thicket of scrub pine. Caleb opened the door without a word. Eleanor stepped inside, glancing briefly at the shelves lined with old tools, a cot pushed to one side, and a pot of cold coffee on the stove. "It's quiet," she said. "That's why I built it here," Caleb replied, setting down his hat. She sat stiffly on the edge of the cot. Dust clung to her sleeves, and the badge she carried now rested atop the table like a loaded weapon. Caleb poured her a cup of water. He watched her drink, then asked, "What really brought you here?" Eleanor looked at him for a moment, then placed the cup down. "I'm not here on circuit duty, not officially. You came for someone? I came for many." Outside, Bitter Creek churned with murmurs and shifting eyes. By sunset, the saloon was packed. Half the town debated whether the badge was real. The other half feared it was. No one liked surprises, especially not ones carrying federal weight. Inside the sheriff's office, Clay Torrance sat in silence, staring at a bottle of rye. His deputy, Burke, stood by the window. "She's alive," Burke muttered. "I saw. She was supposed to be gone." Clay's jaw tightened. "She ain't dead. But if she stays, others might be." In Caleb's cabin, Elena leaned forward, fingers steepled. "This town's more than it seems. It's a spoke in a wheel, a meeting point for a system of lies. Land theft, rigged trials, fake judges. Years ago, I uncovered part of it. Got too close. Then they framed me." Caleb listened, silent. "They said I drowned," she added. "Let 'em believe it. But I went underground, and now I'm back." Caleb rubbed his jaw. "Bitter Creek's always smelled wrong. Now I know why. I need someone who knows the land, who can move quiet, who sees more than he speaks." "And what makes you think I'm that man?" "You didn't ask who I was when you bid," she said. "You just acted." They shared a brief moment of stillness, not trust, not yet, but the faint echo of something beginning to form. Back in town, Sheriff Torrance stood from his chair. "If she's here, she's got a reason, and I don't like being anyone's reason." Burke asked, "What do we do?" Clay grabbed his badge. "We remind her who runs this place." As night fell over Bitter Creek, tension coiled like a snake under boot. The town hadn't seen this kind of stillness since the day the railroad bypassed it. Not quiet with peace, but quiet before thunder. And somewhere on the edge of the dark, in a room where dust and secrets mingled freely, two strangers began planning something neither had dared alone. The wind picked up during the night, stirring ash from the cold hearth and whispering through the pine cracks in Caleb's cabin walls. Elena sat at the table, eyes fixed on the badge. Caleb leaned nearby, arms crossed. "Start from the beginning," he said. She took a breath. 3 years ago, I was assigned to the circuit courts in the Western Territories. Sparse towns, fast trials, quicker graves. But something didn't sit right. Every judgment in a string of towns pointed to the same result: eviction, property seizure, and sudden purchases by a company no one ever heard of. Caleb narrowed his eyes. "Land fraud?" "Systemic," she said. "Disguised as legal process. Judges installed by the network. Sheriffs bribed. juries filled with names that never existed. And Bitter Creek? It's the hub. Records flow through here. I traced everything back to this town. She pulled out a worn leather folder and slid it toward him. Inside were hand-drawn maps, coded notes, and sketches of courthouse seals. I filed a report with Washington. Before they could act, my coach was attacked. They burned the documents, left me for dead in a river gulch near Copper Ridge. I survived and disappeared. Caleb flipped a page. This logo, I've seen it on crates in Wilbur's store. Exactly, Elena said. They're laundering titles through trade shipments. The mayor, the sheriff, even the reverend, they're all connected. And what do you plan to do now? He asked. She looked at him. Finish what I started. Outside, the night held its breath. By dawn, they rode quietly into town. Eleanor wore no badge, only a wide hat pulled low and a shawl over her shoulders. Caleb guided her toward a crumbling barn at the edge of Maine, long abandoned, until now. Inside, they found the first piece, a crumpled set of ledgers left behind by a careless deputy. Elena scanned them, fingers trembling. This is part of it, she said. Names, payment records, court falsifications. A rustle outside made them pause. Through a slat in the wood, Caleb spotted Sheriff Torrance talking with the mayor near the saloon. Both looked nervous. The mayor handed over a folded note. Clay read it, then crushed it in his fist. They know something's off, Caleb muttered. We need to move fast. That night, they returned to the cabin. Eleanor spread the documents across the table. Her eyes were focused now, sharper than before. This isn't just about law. It's about justice that never had a chance. Caleb nodded slowly. I trained once with the Texas Rangers. Didn't finish. Walked away when politics got thicker than bullets. But I still remember how to read tracks, ride clean, and shoot when needed. Eleanor glanced at him. Then you're exactly what I need. Their hands brushed briefly as they gathered the pages. Neither spoke of it, but the air had changed. Something fragile and dangerous had begun to stir between them, something forged in fire, and aimed at the dark heart of Bitter Creek. Sheriff Clay Torrance stood on the porch of the jailhouse at high noon, arms crossed, jaw set. His eyes scanned the dusty street as Caleb rode into town alone, his expression unreadable. Inside the saloon, Burke whispered, "He's with her now." Clay didn't answer. He stepped off the porch and met Caleb halfway. "McGraw," he said evenly. "Got a moment?" Caleb slowed his horse. "If it's about the woman, I got nothing more to say." "Not yet you don't." Clay raised his hand. Two deputies emerged from the alley and leveled rifles. Caleb didn't flinch. "What's the charge?" "Conspiracy, harboring a fugitive." "Interfering with legal process," Clay recited as if rehearsed. "And who filed those charges?" Clay smiled coldly. "I did." The stock of a rifle knocked Caleb from the saddle. The townspeople watched in silence as he was dragged through the street, dust caking his coat and blood trickling from his lip. Elena saw it from a distance, hidden behind the curtains of an old boarding house. She clenched her fists until her nails drew blood. "You foolish man," she whispered. "I told you not to interfere." Burke approached her door later, hands empty. "Clay says you got until sundown to leave Bitter Creek, or McGraw don't see another morning." She didn't respond, only closed the door. Caleb sat inside the holding cell, arms chained above his head. Blood trickled from a cut above his brow. Clay leaned against the bars. "You picked the wrong cause, cowboy." Caleb's voice was hoarse. "I've seen worse men than you hang by sundown." Clay grinned. "Ain't no one left to hang me." From the boarding house, Elena mounted her horse and rode east, wind in her coat, anger burning behind her eyes. Her destination, the old telegraph station outside town. She'd passed it days before, a dead place, but the line still hummed faintly. Inside, she wired a single phrase in code, the kind only a few would recognize. Then she waited. Back in Bitter Creek, Clay returned to the jailhouse and found the cell empty, except Caleb still inside, smiling. "What's funny?" Caleb looked up, bruised but steady. "You're nervous." Clay stepped closer. "You should be scared." "I've been scared," Caleb said. "Now I'm angry." In the shadows of the boarding house attic, Elena loaded her revolver. Her hands were steady now. She'd seen too much, survived too long to flinch. At sundown, the town bell rang for supper, but few ate. Everyone had seen the arrest. Everyone wondered how long Bitter Creek could pretend the law was still law. As the sky bled orange and red, Elena returned, eyes sharp, coat flaring behind her. She walked straight to the jailhouse door and stood before it, calm as a mountain. Behind her silence, a storm was rising, and Caleb, beaten but unbroken, smiled through the bars. "They always think it's over," he muttered, "right before it begins." Night blanketed Bitter Creek like a funeral shroud. Torches flickered near the jailhouse, casting long shadows across the dirt street. Sheriff Clay Torrance smoked a cigar on the porch, boots propped on the railing, content. He never saw the riders. 3 of them came through the East Ridge, cloaked in dust and silence. Their horses kicked barely a whisper. They didn't stop in town. They veered behind the church, then split. Inside the jail, Caleb heard the click. The lock turned, clean and quiet. A man in black stepped in, face mostly covered. He gave a nod, then handed Caleb a knife. "No noise," he whispered. "We're ghosts tonight." Caleb cut the wrist rope, winced, and stood. "You from her?" The rider only nodded again. Outside, a second man scaled the roof and dropped a smoking flask down the chimney. The smoke curled through the jailhouse fast. Clay choked, stumbled outside, waving his pistol. "What the—" Then he saw the cell door wide open, and no McGraw. He ran, screaming for Burke. Behind the saloon, Eleanor waited. The third rider handed her a pouch. She opened it. Wax-sealed documents, official stamps, and something heavier, a sealed revolver wrapped in cloth. "How you got 20 minutes, the rider said. "More if they panic." She took the bundle, then looked toward the sheriff's office. "That's plenty." In the hills outside town, the 4 regrouped. Caleb, still bruised, leaned against a rock. One of the men unrolled a canvas map. "We searched the back office," he said. "Found this wedged under a floorboard." He laid down a thick ledger. Names, dates, payments, seals of multiple counties. Elena's eyes narrowed. "It's everything." "They've been running this circuit for years," the man said. "This ledger alone is enough to drop a dozen men into federal cells." Caleb glanced at the pages. "The mayor's in here," Elena nodded. "And the reverend. Half the damn town." The wind stirred the pages. "But now they'll know," Caleb warned. "You think they'll just wait to be arrested?" "No," Elena said. "They'll come for us." One of the riders grinned. "Let 'em." By dawn, Caleb and Eleanor returned to the cabin. They didn't speak much. Too much had shifted in a single night. She laid the ledger beside her badge on the table. The 2 symbols, law and proof, glared under the lantern. "You could have run," she said quietly. "So could you," he replied. In the hush that followed, a single gunshot rang out in the far hills. Not a warning. A message. They both looked toward town. "Tomorrow," she said, "we end this." Caleb walked to the window, watching the sky grow lighter. "Tomorrow we burn the lie." And behind them, in the shadows of the silent cabin, the badge and the ledger waited. 2 weapons, polished not with steel, but with truth. At dawn, Bitter Creek stirred to an unfamiliar sound, the pounding of nails against wood. Eleanor stood before the sheriff's office, driving her badge into the doorframe with slow, deliberate strikes. The silver glinted in the rising sun. Below it she pinned a single sheet of parchment, handwritten in bold ink. "Public trial at noon. Citizens of Bitter Creek summoned." A hush fell across the street as the townsfolk emerged from porches and saloons, blinking at the impossible sight. Clay Torrance watched from the shadows of his window, lips curled in contempt. "She thinks this is Washington," he spat. The mayor paced behind him. "You said she was dead," Clay growled. "She should be." By midday, the crowd had gathered. Some stood curious, others anxious. A few carried pistols under coats, but most simply waited. Elena stood on the steps of the old courthouse, papers in hand, eyes steady. Caleb stood nearby, quiet, with the ledger held tight to his chest. "I stand here," Elena began, "not as a victim, not as a woman, but as a federal judge, appointed, sworn, and nearly buried." A murmur ran through the crowd. "You were misled," she continued, "by leaders who used law to steal, who wore badges to betray, who sold this town piece by piece while you looked the other way." From the back, a shout. "You got proof?" Caleb stepped forward. "We do." He handed the ledger to Eleanor, who held it high. "Names, amounts, false court records, witness lists that never existed. It's all here." The mayor pushed through the crowd. "This is a trick." "No," Elena said, turning to face him. "This is your handwriting." Gasps rose. Burke, standing near the jail, took a step back. All eyes turned to him. Sweat gathered at his temple. "I didn't know everything," he muttered. "But you knew something," Elena replied, "didn't you?" He looked at the crowd, then at Caleb, then back at Clay, who glared at him like a hound about to snap. I took orders," Burke said, "but I saw the documents. I saw the bribes." Elena nodded slowly. "Would you testify?" Burke swallowed. "I will." The shift in the crowd was immediate. What began as fear became murmur, and from murmur came anger, not at Elena but at those they once trusted. "You lied to us," someone yelled toward the mayor. "You jailed good men," shouted another. The mayor backed away. "This is mob justice. You can't do this." "I'm not leading a mob," Elena said. "I'm reopening your eyes." Behind her, the doors to the courthouse creaked open. "We will proceed," she said. "Today. Now." And with that, Eleanor stepped inside, the crowd slowly following. No jury was called. There didn't need to be one. Bitter Creek was about to judge itself, and for the first time in years, justice wasn't just a word whispered in fear. It was a promise carved in oak and spoken aloud. Clay Torrance didn't wait for the gavel. As Elena stepped into the courthouse, he vanished through the back alleys of Bitter Creek, spurs silent, face carved in fury. The mayor caught up with him near the livery. "We have to leave," the mayor hissed. "Now. She has the crowd. That ledger—" Clay grabbed him by the collar, shoving him against a post. "You think I'll run like a coyote? I ran once, never again." The mayor's voice trembled. "Then what?" Clay's eyes burned. "We kill her." He sent Burke on a false errand, then gathered 2 loyal riders, men bought long ago, paid well to shoot without asking. He handed each a rifle, nodded once. "Before nightfall," he said. "No trial, no parade, just silence." At the courthouse, Elena questioned townspeople one by one. Witnesses emerged, reluctant at first, then bold. Records read aloud turned stomachs. A young widow recounted how her husband was jailed for a land claim the mayor later bought for pennies. The town leaned in, watching their shame laid bare. Caleb stood guard by the door, one hand on his revolver, eyes never still. Then something snapped. A bottle shattered near the window. Caleb turned fast. Outside, movement. "Back door!" he shouted. Eleanor ducked as bullets tore through the wall. Screams filled the air. The crowd scattered. Caleb dragged her down behind the judge's bench. "Ambush!" he growled. Clay's last hand. One of the gunmen burst through the side door. A rider in black tackled him before he fired. A shot rang out. The rider slumped. Blood spread fast. Elena pulled her weapon and fired twice. The second assailant fell, screaming, wounded. Outside, Clay took aim at the window. Caleb spotted him. "Clay!" he roared, stepping into the line of fire. A shot cracked the sky. Caleb staggered. Eleanor screamed, catching him as he dropped beside her. Blood soaked his shirt. But he was alive. Barely. Clay vanished into the shadows before she could return fire. Inside, the crowd began to rise again. But this time they were not spectators. They were citizens reborn. They surged forward, grabbing the wounded man, securing the doors, calling for bandages. Elena held Caleb's head in her lap, her hands shaking. "You stubborn fool," she whispered. He gritted his teeth. "Out, still breathing." She pressed her forehead to his only briefly. Outside, the mayor tried to run, but this time the people saw. And this time they followed. He wouldn't make it far. Inside, Elena rose slowly. Dust fell from the ceiling. The room still smelled of gunpowder. She looked at the bench. The gavel lay there, untouched. She picked it up. "Bring them in," she said. The trial was not over. And Caleb, through pain-clenched teeth, whispered, "They thought it was fear that kept this town quiet." He smiled faintly. They forgot what truth sounds like. Lanterns flickered in the courthouse as night fell, casting long shadows on the wood-paneled walls. The pews were full again, but the mood had changed. No longer uncertain, the townsfolk sat upright, alert. They'd seen blood, they'd seen truth, and now they wanted justice. Eleanor stood at the front, coat stained with ash and Caleb's blood, her voice unwavering. "We proceed," she said, "by the authority vested in me as a federal judge, an authority you all now recognize. I call this session to order." Caleb sat propped against the wall, pale but alive, his shoulder tightly bandaged. His eyes met Elena's. He nodded once. The door opened. Two men dragged the second gunman inside. His leg bled, but he still snarled like a caged dog. Elena didn't flinch. "You took part in a planned murder," she said. "Who gave the order?" He spat blood. "I ain't talking." "You already have," she replied. She turned to Burke, now standing beside the deputy's desk. "You testified earlier. Tell us again." Burke swallowed. "Clay said it needed to be clean, fast, before she poisons the town," he said. "And the mayor?" Burke nodded slowly. "He paid for the rifles." The room stirred. Eleanor opened the ledger again, pointing to the stamped page. "Here is the mayor's signature authorizing a land seizure that never went through the courts. Below it, Clay Torrance's note of approval." She held it up. "This isn't hearsay. This is written conspiracy. Extortion, fraud, obstruction of justice, and attempted murder." The mayor was dragged in by townsmen, face bruised, shirt torn. He stumbled, eyes wild. "This is madness," he shouted. "You have no jurisdiction." "I have what the people recognize," Elena said, "and they've seen enough." She faced the crowd. "You've lived under fear, under silence. But the law, the real law, it was never gone, it was buried. Tonight we dig it up." She turned back to the mayor. "How do you plead?" He laughed bitterly. "To who, you?" "No," she said. "To them." She stepped aside. The room fell silent. One by one, citizens rose, a blacksmith, a schoolteacher, a widow. They each spoke. "Guilty. Guilty. Guilty." The mayor sank to his knees. Elena looked to Clay's empty chair. "Sheriff Torrance has fled. He will be hunted. His crimes do not vanish with him." The front door slammed open, a boy panting, out of breath. "He's headed west. 2 riders on his trail already." Elena nodded. "He won't get far." She turned to Caleb. "You still breathing?" she asked softly. "Barely. You'll need to hold on. Tomorrow this town wakes up new." He smiled faintly. "Then I'll crawl into it." She placed the gavel down on the bench. "For now," she said, "let justice rest." And outside, Bitter Creek stood still, not in fear, but in awe. For the first time, the law had a voice, and the town had finally listened. The morning after the trial rose over Bitter Creek with a silence not born of fear, but of something new. For the first time in years, no booted patrol marched through the streets, no bribes exchanged hands, and no screams echoed from behind locked jailhouse doors. The townspeople gathered in the square, waiting not for orders but for one another. Elena stood near the well, coat off, sleeves rolled up. She'd helped an old farmer lift a broken wagon wheel minutes before. Her hands were stained with grease instead of ink. Her badge lay inside the courthouse now, untouched. Caleb walked toward her, slower than usual, one arm still bound from the bullet wound. The other clutched a small canvas parcel. "Elena," he said. She turned. "You should be resting." "I've rested enough for one lifetime." She smiled gently. "I was thinking," he said, "about staying." "That's so?" "Well, someone's got to keep the law around here. Folks already started clearing out the jailhouse, fixed the roof, cleaned the benches. Even put flowers near the courthouse steps. She nodded. I noticed. He held out the parcel. She opened it slowly. Inside, her badge. I want you to take it, he said. She shook her head. I already carried it long enough. You're not finished. She looked him in the eyes. Yes, I am. There was no regret in her voice, only truth. You carry it now. Caleb exhaled. I'm no judge. No, she said. But you've got the one thing this town needs most. What's that? Conviction. They stood in silence for a moment. Then she stepped back, nodding toward the trail. Time for me to ride. Where to? She shrugged. Wherever the next lie is buried. Caleb stared at her, jaw tight. You always run toward trouble? She smiled. I run toward justice. He watched as she mounted her horse. The town gathered to see her off. No speeches, no songs, just respect. As she passed the courthouse, someone in the crowd called out, Come back sometime. Elena turned her head. Only if you make it worth returning. Laughter broke the tension. Hands waved. And with that, she kicked her horse into motion and rode west, Sun at her back. Bitter Creek didn't watch her leave with fear. They watched her go with pride. Caleb stood in the center of town, the badge now pinned to his chest. He didn't say much, he never did, but his presence spoke louder than a speech ever could. A new sheriff, a new town, and the beginning of something honest. Before we close this tale of dust, bullets, and redemption, don't forget to subscribe for more legends of the untamed West. And if you want to follow another unforgettable story, click the next video on your screen now. Because justice never sleeps, and neither do the ones who chase it.